Good day, folks. Rich Jacob here with Western New York Coaches. We're here today with our Coaches Chalk Talk. And we have our Director of Performance, Coach Bob Bateson, as our guest. I'm here with Managing Director, Coach Blair Lipsitz. And today, Coach, we're talking about such a background you have in strength and conditioning, but really, coming into the morning here, it's well-being. It's all about well-being. Coach Bateson and I he's like my brother. It's been a long time together, and I'm witness, Coach, to you as a healer. I'm witness to you giving back to the community. I'm witness to you training professional athletes, youth athletes, families, people coming back from various medical situations. I'm really most impressed by who you are as a character and how you give back to so many people. But to start today, I think I'm going to hand it over to Coach Blair, and she could start with some specific questions. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, we're so excited to have you back.
It's good to be here. Thanks.
Back here again. And I think my first question is, how did you guys meet?
Well, Coach, I can take that one.
You take that one.
I can take that one. So in 2005, Western New York, after 27-year hiatus, decided to bring back professional basketball.
Right.
I was fortunate enough to become the general manager and head coach of the Buffalo Rapids then, and I was in search of my right-hand person, right, assistant coach, but most importantly, in my mind, it was an expert in strength and conditioning as well as competition. So Mark Hutchinson of Hutch's, the Great Hutch's Restaurant here in Buffalo, bought a season ticket, and I was delivering his season tickets, and he asked me who was doing your strength and conditioning. I said, you know what, we're in search. And he said, well, I have a recommendation. And he gave me Bob Bateson's name. Now, Bob was on his way to Italy. He'll tell me, I know he finished his professional football career in Italy, but there was some things going on. He can tell us where he was on his way to Italy. But I said, listen, can we have an appointment? He said, I'll be right back from Italy, and then we can. And the rest, as they say, Coach, is history. We've coached many years and have been together through a back-to-back state championships most recently, and he's just amazing.
And were you thinking, Coach Bateson, at that time about getting into coaching, strength coaching, or were you already in it?
Well, yeah, I've been in coaching. After the football career was over, coaching was a very easy transition.
Yes.
And so I was kind of always in that mode. Even in my profession with the strength and conditioning component, it's coaching.
Yes.
Every component of it's coaching. It's multifaceted. I never take one approach to anything because it's a mental capacity and it's a physical capacity you have to combine. So it's very multidimensional with strength and conditioning. And there's a lot of people in the field that don't really see that or understand that, and they get too one-dimensional in it.
Got it. You mean strictly strength and not including the emotional?
The emotional, the mental component, because it all starts there. You have to get the kids and the athletes or the person, because it could be a rehab situation as well. In the right mental mindset. And that's where it really takes place. They have to buy into it for themselves as well.
Now, as a player, as a pro athlete, coming back into strength coaching, what were some of the biggest things that you brought with you? I mean, did you have injuries as you were a player, and that was a big part of it that pushed you into that space? And did you feel that mental pull as well?
I did have injuries, as we all do, which I rehabbed from very successfully because, once again, I committed to it physically and mentally, which that's what I learned.
Was that like your cat? What pulled
I learned
you?
By doing it to myself. I was like, okay, you're not going to just get better by going through the motions, I call it checking the box.
Yeah.
You have to really commit, and you have to make that, put it out of your mind, like that injury doesn't exist anymore. And that's how you can really totally get back. You see people get re-injured, athletes get re-injured, because they never mentally really re-engaged, you know? So and I always was involved in it. I started at a very young age with the strength component, where I understood that, like, hey, I need to get stronger, faster, bigger to play this sport at the next levels. So I was involved in it well before. It really was more of a trend. Before it was really part of the programs. I was fortunate. My high school ball was in Columbus, Ohio, where we had a strength room.
Yeah.
You know, when I moved here to Western New York.
Where is it?
I had to build one in my house, and I invited the team over to my house.
Wow!
And I started putting together the workouts for our team out of my house, out of the basement of my house.
And where were you getting the information to build those workouts? Just
from the experience that I had in the high school in Ohio, in Columbus, Ohio, and then just being, getting the interest and involved in the field. And I always say I came up on the cusp of that wave of that whole strength and conditioning and fitness kind of evolution, right? Because back then there really weren't strength coaches,
right?
I mean, the NSCA didn't start, until 1978, I think.
Yeah.
The National Strength and Conditioning Association. So
you were right on that.
We came up on the cusp of that. So it's what you wanted to get out of it, and it was very exciting because I experienced personally the results of it.
Yep. And did you find it hard to have people buy into that and say, this will help your program? I promise this will help your program.
In the beginning, a little bit.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, I worked with a lot of professional baseball players for about 25 years, and I was with the Phillies when Dave Hollins was their third baseman, and Fergozzi was the general manager, and he was old school, knew nothing about it.
Yeah.
And told me, just do whatever it is you do. I don't know anything about it. Just
Yeah.
They didn't even have a official hired strength coach at the time.
Wow. Isn't that incredible?
Yeah.
And now every high school program has one, right?
That was the early 90s. That was
Yeah.
at professional level.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty incredible. We, it's funny when you say coming back from an injury. I had an ankle reconstruction in college, and I remember the first day, my trainer, my strength coach, we're all together, and they said, okay, jump up on that box. And I looked at them like they were crazy. I said, I can't jump up on that box. I just had my ankle completely redone. And they're like, just do it in one jump. And all of a sudden it's like, all right, back in 4 months, fully we're going, we're playing. And you just really have to establish trust, like any coach, with your athletes, right? That's got to be a huge
100%.
piece of it.
Yeah, because what was happening to you was neurologically those muscles were turned off.
Yes.
So they didn't want to re-engage. So you have to get them to re-engage. And then the key is to get them to re-engage at full capacity.
Yeah. Yeah. And mentally, I do remember that, having to push through that. It's like, I feel like I could still use it as a crutch a little bit. Maybe I can't jump as high. Maybe I can't. And it's like, no.
I call it I have to get the athlete to take ownership of that body part again. Like make it part of you again, not like, it's out there.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it's so true. It's so true.
That's exciting. Now, you've both, in some of our discussions, have talked about what happens in the strength room, related to culture and the team. Can we talk a little bit more about that, Coach?
Yeah, for us, it was a huge piece of that's where mental toughness really began for us, was in the strength room. And it was part of a coach, right? It was our strength coach, which was what we always said, not, the strength and conditioning program. It was a coach.
Yeah, and coaching that component, like you said, the physical aspect of it translates, not just lifting weights. That's just one component of it. Right?
Yes.
It transfers to what you do on the court, the field, the ice, whatever your sport might be, by understanding that mental toughness, what that feels like to be in what I call the work zone. Get out of the comfort zone and let's get into the work zone. That's where changes happen. Changes take place. Life begins out of the comfort zone. Right. So that was my mantra, my philosophy with those people, with my kids. So we would push them in that zone where they didn't, because that was all new to them. All right. You feel that resistance and you want to say, oh, okay, I'm done. Stop. Come on, you got 3 more in you.
Right.
All right. Add 20 more pounds to that. Let's go. And you start to they start to buy into that, like progress, because they're starting to feel that progress. That translates on to the field or the court in the same way. When you're out there and you're tired and someone's pushing up on you, you know how to push back.
Right.
You know how to stay tough in there. And it really does start in the strength and conditioning. I mean, that's why you see programs at the professional level and the very high D1 levels, those coaches get paid as much as the other coaches now. And it didn't start out that way.
Right. And I think they train before they even get in the gym. They really start in the strength room, because you can't even get in the gym. You know, there are rules and all these things, and people are lifting, and people are sort of learning their team there first. Who's going to show up? Who's going to be gritty? You know, who are you going to be able to count on when the whole team's got to get this one thing on the track, whatever it is.
Who puts the effort out? You
Exactly.
can see it. It exposes people.
Yeah, and I think like anything, there's a belief system there, right? Where you may not believe that you have those 2 or 3 more reps in you. And then all of a sudden you're building confidence within yourself in the strength room, and that can translate as well. Right?
Exactly how it translates, yes.
Yeah.
But like you said, it's important also because the camaraderie that's built in that strength room, that's where it really starts, more so than even on the court, because that's where you see if someone's really going to put that effort in. Are they really going to push?
Yeah.
Are they going to bail out on that last rep or 2?
Yeah.
Are they going to bail out on that last exercise?
Yeah.
You know, you're going to get called out by your teammates for doing that. If you bail there, you're going to bail on the court.
Yeah. Yeah.
It
So you're building that trust all the time.
Coach, talk about building the relationship with the head coach of any sport.
Yeah. So important, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's a team. It's a smaller team, right? The support. Yeah.
Yeah. And Coach Jacobs and our relationship is very different. We really feed off each other. I always say that I would never do that. I would never coach when I'm coaching without him, and it wouldn't be the same. I would not get the same results without him.
Yeah.
It was a certain feed off that. I kind of related to the Bears, 85 Bears with Dicka and Buddy Ryan. Together, they were invincible.
Right.
When they broke off on their own, wasn't even close. Wasn't even close to the same. What they each brought to the table together was amazing.
Yeah.
And they didn't even see that themselves until it was too late. That's why they both went separate ways and never really were as successful.
Did they ever come back together?
No.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Egos.
I think, yeah. I think you really recognize when you've got something good, when you've got something special, especially when you've both been doing it a very long time, right? You've both been coaching a very long time. And even in the infancy of my coaching, the first couple of years, I recognized our group, our, core group felt really good. It felt like there was trust there. It felt like everybody kind of had each other's backs, and we were all working toward the same goal, which I think can be tough, right?
Yeah, it's also understanding your roles. Like I was a strength coach for the Nigerian national team 2 years ago for the World Cup.
Yeah.
Okay. And my relationship with the players was very strong, and actually it was just with Alex the other night, and he was talking about, I couldn't believe the relationship that I had with those players in such a short amount of time.
Yeah.
The trust.
Right.
But it's also understanding, like, I am not going to really do X and O's. That's his.
Yeah.
I'm staying out of that lane. All right. It's not really what I do, but I can bring the mental component and say, Coach, so-and-so, get him off the court. He's a step behind.
Yeah.
Or, hey, we need to do this or that. And then he'll put it into the format. I'm not going to try to do that. That's not what I do.
Right.
And then he gives me that same respect in the strength and conditioning component. So we kind of know our roles.
Yeah.
And you have to know your roles and respect each other's roles, but they do mesh. If you don't try to mesh them, then it becomes different compartments and they become silos.
Right.
And we need to break down the interior walls of the silo and mesh it.
Yeah. And I think another big part of that is knowing what your weaknesses are, your own personal weaknesses. So who can make us better? Who can make me better and then make this team better and help these athletes, right?
Yes, our strengths and areas for improvement.
Yeah.
Right? Because that W word, Coach, we
I
try to
know,
stay away
weakness.
from.
But I,
even though it's
I'm
real,
a perfectionist, so weakness is like always in the brain.
There you go. Well, and it worked for you, okay?
Right.
4-time
That pushed me.
NCAA champion, Big Ten Player of the Year, playing pro. I'm not arguing. I'm not arguing here. But that Coach, you talk about sharing the values and staying in your lane. And again, just like as you just said, Coach Blair, knowing who we are and what we bring to the table is so important. And I think this idea of sharing the same values and, keep the egos in check.
Yeah.
Right? Even right here at Western New York Coaches, we work a lot in sports psychology. We're bringing this paradigm shift to the forefront with coaching. We're bringing components of sports psychology, and this we talk about a sports psychology toolbox. And there again, in the NCAA, Coach, you talk about the higher levels of the NCAA now. with 22 sports and 22 head coaches and then that many assistant coaches. Now there's a sports psychologist assigned to each
Right.
team, right? And we know we talk about the locker room a lot in our discussions, and as coaches we do have our egos. So are we really welcoming coaches, the sports psychologist perspective? Are we welcoming the sports psychologist into the locker room? Sometimes yes, sometimes with hesitation, and sometimes flat out no.
Right.
So you're talking about breaking down, or you mentioned silo situations in coaching relationships. It's the same thing
Yep.
with coaches and sports psychology experts. That being said, what makes someone a sports psychology expert? Or it's nice to have the intention of learning to become a sports psychologist. But again, Malcolm Gladwell, 10,000 hours, right? It takes years, as
Yep.
you alluded to before, Coach Blair. It takes years and time and repetitions, and there is no end to developing our skill set and our knowledge base. So there's a much more discussion that's necessary to help everyone understand, and to your point, Coach, what everybody brings to the table. And you said it, Coach, it's a smaller team.
Right.
That's how the experience becomes optimal
Right.
for the participants, is when everybody can be courageous enough to understand, look, I bring this, my partners bring everything else. We do this together.
Right.
It is, Coach. It is Gestalt.
I knew you were going to say it.
It does, in the quest for Gestalt.
Yes.
Coach, let's talk about the young folks of the world. Let's talk about youth. Coach, I know you had a few specific questions.
Yeah, and kind of speaking to the role of, what's the role of overuse now? Are you seeing a lot of overuse in young athletes? Or the role of what you do?
Yeah, well, where I see the overuse is in the length of the sports. Like they're in multiple sports, or
Yes.
there's never a real off season. Listen, and I've had this conversation with parents and their kids where they're playing two sports constantly, but want to get them bigger and faster and stronger. Not going to happen,
Right.
Because you're always in an in-season type of training program. So we don't give them enough real off-season time.
Right.
And you have to do that. And I'm going to tell you, by high school, you better decide that.
Yeah.
All right, because that's when you
'Cause
really
your body's gonna
that's
start
when you're
breaking
starting
down.
to really develop. All right.
Okay.
Or you're going to really break down and
Yeah.
be behind. So that's when where the real overuse is in the actual playing of that sport, where it's never a break.
Okay.
They never stop.
Do you think that, we were seeing in volleyball some of these high school seasons going 4 or 5 months.
Right now, basketball,
You know?
and then it becomes something else. Then there's another league they play in after that.
Right.
And then it's all summer. I have some high school basketball kids that come in right now, and I'm working around this summer AAU schedule. It's like, well, where's the
Right.
break?
Yeah.
Right.
How are you going to get faster and stronger
Yeah.
if you're never giving yourself a really, really 3 to 4 month off season? It's just a reality.
Yeah.
Coach, that is such an important point. Please make that point again to our listeners.
Because we're too involved in thinking that we always have to be playing the game.
Yes.
The game is in stages. Why do we have different stages? We have the season, we have postseason,
Right.
all right, and we have in season, postseason, preseason. There's a reason for that, right?
Yeah.
And off season, preseason, right? So those 4 components, right, in season, postseason, off season, preseason, are set up for a reason. That's how we periodize the workout based on those seasons for development of any athlete.
Oh yeah, and Coach, they always talk about any major correction happens in the off season.
Yes.
Right. So we have the off season.
So where it gets lost is at the high school and below. That level is where it's lost, is where it really should be instilled. Because if you get to the next level of major college and the pros, there's a legitimate off season.
Yeah.
Right. There is.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You're not doing that sport year round. Your off season is your postseason recovery, then you're in the off season training, and then preseason training back to the season. Okay.
Yeah.
Which you still are doing training during the season. So that's where it really needs to be instilled in the younger ages, because that's also where they're going to be developed the fastest and the most. Right. But some of the development is stifled
Yeah. Right.
because they never get there.
And talk a little bit about the recovery, because I know that you are like at the forefront of so many different recovery, ways to recover for athletes. And what are some of the things that you're seeing right now that are important and that are really working?
Far infrared sauna. People have heard of infrared.
Yeah.
You're seeing more of it being used. We use a lot of that, and we use it as a warm-up as well as a recovery tool as well. Because far infrared, just to give a little background on, so people might not know what it is, it's the furthest wave of light from the sun.
Okay.
Far infrared, not infrared. It's not a light beam you see, it's a wave, okay? And that penetrates through your clothes and into the body tissue about 2 millimeters, where it will shrink your water and blood cells about half their size. So now we get more penetration of water and blood into the muscle tissue, into the joints.
Got it.
So we can loosen up stiff muscles, stiff joints in as little as a 10 to 15 minute treatment in far infrared.
And are you using that with everyone, with rehab patients?
With recovery for training.
Right.
So that's a tool that we use quite a bit. You're starting to see more of it. Also, the dynamic compression, I call it peristaltic compression as well, with Normatec, very big. And we found, just that.
I just remember the bodysuits, laying in the bodysuits.
And flushing out those muscles and flushing out the fluid muscles and pushing it through your lymphatic system, which not only cleanses your muscle, but it cleanses your filter system of your body also, which gives your body better recovery, because we're pushing out toxins and waste, okay?
We were doing this in college, and I remember this was somebody saying, this is something that's new that we've really started to try. Now this is the mid-2000s at that time, right?
Yep.
And they're saying, all right, we're going to do lymphatic, I think it was called lymph drainage. Does that sound right?
Or lymphatic flush,
Yeah. And at that time, I remember us being like, what on earth is going on, right? Yeah. But then you really feel, I used to get headaches from it.
Yeah, it's very, very effective way to recover. So, but and that can be done like all year round too.
Yeah.
I try to use those recovery components during the season as well as in your off-season training, right?
Right.
So those are some of the more common things being used now.
Yeah.
Theraguns and the massage stuff has been around a while too, but it's taken a bigger role because it's something you can do on your own.
Yeah.
Before, the massage stuff was great, but you had to go to a massage person to do that. Where here you can get this deep tissue with Hypervolt or Theragun, or PowerPlate has one now too, where you get deep tissue massaging, which is good to help also break up tissue and open things up, create more blood flow.
And how important in recovery is nutrition, sleep? Like what piece
components
of that is?
There's 3 components. Right? Think of a 3-legged stool. So if you're out of balance with one of the 3, the stool doesn't stand up, right?
Right.
So you have your workouts, right? Your training workouts. You have your rest and recuperation and nutrition. You have to balance those 3 things.
That's the one I got to work on.
I don't care what level the athlete's at.
Yeah.
They're always out of balance on one of them.
Right. Right.
There's people that are really zealous and they train all the time, but their recovery is terrible.
Yeah.
Or the nutrition is terrible.
Right.
A lot of times with the athletes, especially the pro athletes or high level the NCAA athletes, the training component's usually there. Usually there. You're not there.
Right.
It's the recovery and the nutrition component that's not. Well, and a lot of places now have that in place. So you can go in any pro facility, they have chefs now.
Yep.
They have the stuff set up, shakes and protein bars and stuff set up constantly throughout the facility. Major colleges are doing it also. We were at Fordham for a state championship, and they showed their facility at Fordham, and the nutritional component they have for their athletes and the basketball team anyway. I'm sure they do it with all of them. That's just one component that we saw. Was very planned, and it wasn't like, oh, I'm guessing if my athlete's getting this. We're giving it to you.
Right.
But that's that's the next level.
Yeah. And you hope when that's happening that there's also education going into it, right? Because a lot of athletes, once they leave that college atmosphere where everything is so regimented.
And I think right now, that's a great point. I think right now the education is by osmosis.
Yeah, right.
They're getting educated because they're doing it, but they're really not understanding totally why or how.
What's behind it.
It's given to them,
Yeah.
But that's the easiest way to facilitate it. You try to teach people, they don't want to hear it, they don't want to learn it, but so there's a little bit of a roadblock there. But you're right. Some will pick it up as a way of life.
Yeah.
And some won't.
And it is so important to understand the nutrition and, you know, how to take care of yourself once you leave college and you go, you know, but a lot of people, a lot of athletes I know, you know, they never really took it to heart, which is, it's so interesting.
Well,
that
it's
you
the same thing.
dedicate.
It's the same with the training component too, because they're an athlete. People think, oh, they know how to train. No, they've been told what to do. So when they come out, you see them. They don't work out anymore. They're not doing things actively like they were, and all of a sudden they get heavier. All right, they get out of shape. That's just because they're not in that routine anymore. That routine is what kept them there. And that didn't translate into their everyday life after sports.
Right, as a part of the routine.
Some people it does, and some it doesn't.
Yeah,
that's so good. And you know, speaking of the educational component, enter WNY Coaches. Right, one of in the heart of our mission is to help people understand, help coaches understand, help parents understand. Coach Blair, I know we have a couple minutes. If you have,
I do have one more question that might be.
Yes.
So I was talking recently with someone who said they had a friend, her daughter tore her ACL at 16 and thought her career's over forever, right? And my question is, first of all, I know that's not true. I have a friend who tore ACL in college and went on to be an Olympian. But
especially nowadays.
Yeah, exactly. And my question is that kind of stuff preventable, or is body mechanics more important, or the strength component is the most important?
Yeah, but the strength component is the most important in the right format.
Right.
All right, not just grabbing weights and throwing weights around. Full range of motion movements that are precise in the right angle, the right planes. There's a lot of even strength coaches that, because also they can be a little overwhelmed when you have. Like even, let's talk locally. Canisius College is one strength coach for all the teams. It's insane.
Wow.
That is a recipe for failure, not success. So commit to the programs and get strength coaches. You know, don't let a strength coach have more than 2 teams. 2 would be a lot, okay, to do it right. Then that coach has to train those athletes to make sure that movement, is that squat right? Is that lunge right? Is that bench press correct?
Well, and does it translate into your sport, right?
Because that's where the injuries will happen. And that's when it's a shame when they get injured trying to prevent injuries. You know, so when it comes to ACLs and women, we already know that, yes, there's a test that we do. Actually, I do on my young female athletes. We started at about, depending on where they're at, it could be a 10-year-old, it could be a 12-year-old. And we do a simple box jump. Jump off the box, land, and let me see how you land.
Right.
If you land in recoil and you drop down, you're probably going to be fine not going to tear your ACL because your hamstrings are involved.
Got it. They're engaged.
When you jump off that box and drop and you land almost straight-legged, or you bend at the waist and they don't compress the knees down, those hamstrings don't want to get involved. And we found out why is in women, the hamstring involvement in that just isn't as readily available as it is for the male athlete.
Yeah.
All right. And I don't know I've never really seen research to say why. It was just a genetic thing. But that is one thing that we can learn in advance. Then start to teach that athlete how to get depth, get down there, get the hamstrings involved, get them to fire properly, and then you can prevent that ACL tear in young female athletes.
I'm now knowing why we did so many depth jumps.
Well, that depth jump is one of the best ways to increase your vertical.
Right.
As long as you can drop and recoil, but if you don't drop down, then we're not really improving that explosiveness, but we're not involving all the muscles properly. Okay. But that's just a simple test that we can do with a young female athlete to find out, are you engaging these hamstrings or not? And they're not trying to engage them.
Yeah, of course.
It's just isn't turned on. It's just neurologically is not turned on. Remember, your central nervous system is command central for every skeletal muscle contraction and movement in your body.
Right.
All right.
You got to train all those.
So some things aren't turned on. It's like after your injury, you jump on the box and your brain is saying, "No way, I can't do this," because it wasn't turned on.
Right.
It had been turned off because of the injury.
That ankle doesn't exist.
So to redo that is called neuroplasticity. Is how we have tools to accelerate that as well. It's just old school, conventional movements. There's things we do now that can accelerate that turning on of that nervous system.
We learned all about neuroplasticity in my psych classes.
There you go.
It's bringing me back.
Well, Coach, I'll tell you, you're like a lifeline here. So
I know I could do this all day.
We're so thankful that you're with us at Western New York Coaches, and you're always so willing to share your expertise. How about we can close today with 2 things, if you don't mind: advice to parents for their children, and advice to coaches related to our topic today.
Okay, that's a really loaded question and has a very, very broad brush here. But for parents, let your kids play.
Mm-hmm.
Let them play. Don't play through them. Okay, find out what they like to do and get them involved in that, and don't overdo it with them. All right, don't put them in 5 sports. Don't give them a full 12-month season of anything.
Mm-hmm.
All right, that not only burns them out physically, it doesn't give them a chance to develop physically, but it burns them out mentally as well. All right, coaches. As a coach, there's a lot of aspects, and it's difficult for some coaches that try to do everything. They try to be the strength coach and the conditioning coach. They try to do it all. That's it's a thankless job, and it's almost a recipe for failure. So try to put the right people around you to make that more successful. And as a coach, don't ever think you're bigger than the game. So don't let your ego get in the way of the development of your players as well, because that's one of our mantras.
It's about them, right?
We're not bigger than the game as coaches or players.
Right.
And when you think you are, you will fail.
Yeah. That's when it starts to get even more tough.
It does. Guys, this has been awesome. Coach Blair, Coach Bateson, thanks for being here. This is WNY Coaches signing off.